All right, hello and welcome to this week's RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo. Later on, I'll be joined by Shelbourne's Rachel Graham as Euro 2025 enters its final week with all the games live to watch or stream on RTÉ. And of course, you can follow the podcast on RTÉ.ie, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and you can subscribe for free on your platform of choice. But without further ado, I'm delighted to be joined now by Richie Towell and Alan Cawley to chat LOI in Europe, the FAI Cup, and also a few little transfers as well. So, Alan and Richie, how are you?
All
Morning,
good.
Raf.
Good
Nice to have.
stuff. Yeah, we'll start on the Champions League and the Conference League as well. So obviously last week Linfield and Shelbourne met in the second leg at Windsor Park. Quite a nervous start in the end from Shelbourne, Alan. When you kind of look at it, obviously, David Healy had already sort of indicated last week that Linfield would come out a little bit stronger. They did, but Shels had a lot of setbacks to get through as well in that first part before the Ali Coot goal.
Yeah, I was up at the game, Raf. I travelled up and it was actually really enjoyable. Windsor Park looked magnificent. There was a great crowd from Shelbourne as well. I think they brought 1,300 fans. There was a good crowd in from Linfield. So yeah, in terms of the venue and all that kind of thing, it was really set up for a cracking game. And it was an exciting game as well. As you say, Linfield were a lot better than what we'd seen in Talca Park, which we expected, because they had that extra game under their belt, I suppose. But I always felt Shelbourne were kind of in control of the game. And even though the most disappointing thing for me, Raf, and we'll get to the little things that happen in the game, but just the most disappointing thing for me, even being at the game, is that they never killed Linfield off. And there was always that hope, kind of while it was still 1-1, that you're thinking something might happen here. A silly decision for a penalty kick, a set piece, anything can happen really, as we know. When there's only one goal in it, or even when it was level. So that was kind of the disappointing thing. But I think overall, over the two ties, they were the better team. Couple of dodgy moments with Conor Cairns, obviously, with the mistake that he made, and they probably should have scored and should have punished him, Linfield. So that was a big chance from their point of view. Then when Shelbourne into the lead, a good finish from Ali Coote. Linfield obviously got the goal back fairly quickly as well. A silly handball at the back post. It was a stonewall penalty. And that gave them a bit of life and a bit of hope. And then you're thinking it's set up for the second half. But I always felt, as I said, even before the sending off, I always felt that Shelbourne were kind of in control. And once the sending off, it kind of finished it as a contest. But that would be the major disappointing thing for me. It was great that they got through, Raf. Good result. Obviously, it was hugely important in terms of not just getting through that game, but the financial reward and guaranteeing yourself the fallback of the different games now if they were to lose in the next round. But I just felt at that stage they were there to be killed off, and they weren't clinical enough, and they should have punished them and probably should have ran out 2 or 3 goals better than what it was.
Yeah, and Richie, obviously the halftime period was going to be very important in terms of the team talk. I mean, Conor Kearns had gone down twice, had to be taken off with an injury. Also, then Mark Coyle was taken off in 21 minutes as well, and obviously you get another leader in Sean Gannon coming on, so it wasn't it wasn't as huge a setback, but still losing your captain at the same time, and then you've just had a goal disallowed by VAR as well just before the break, so an important period for Joey O'Brien in that time period.
Yeah, listen, it's something that I think Joey will learn a lot from. Obviously, it's not ideal when your captain and your goalkeeper has to go off at half time. So he would have been probably a little bit concerned about that. But as you said, Raf, you have someone like Sean Gannon able to come on, who's won, 10, 11 league titles, played in European group stages, I think maybe 2 or 3 times now. So you have another real leader that's able to step onto the field and fill that void. And I actually think that, I know, as Alan said, Shels were in control of the game, but I think if Linfield don't get that man sent off, it's that proper nerve-wracking coming towards the last 20, 30 minutes. So I think that done them a big favour in the end.
Yeah, in terms of the decision to hold Sean Boyd until quite late on in terms of coming on, what did you make of that in the end?
Yeah, probably surprised me a little bit. But to be fair, was playing well, Raf. He was doing well. And I suppose the fact that they made the early substitution, maybe he was just holding off on a couple of substitutions till towards the end. But he done quite well when he came on, Sean, as he did in the first leg. Made a bit of a difference. But as I said, they just had chances to kill them off, and they never did. They weren't clinical enough. A couple of chances towards the end. Evan Caffrey had a couple where he cut inside. Meepo had one himself. He should have went through. And even though he gets into positions, I just don't think he's clinical enough, Raf. And that might cost him further down the line, or maybe you might only get one chance in the next round against Qarabag, obviously much sterner opposition. And they're the chances that you need to take. So they did run out comfortable winners in the end. But as I said, I was disappointed because when you think Shieldsy played quite well, and we all know Shieldsy, great lad. But he's getting on a little bit now. He did really well when he dropped back centre half. Mulgrew was obviously 39 in midfield. So Shelbourne had a big advantage there, legs-wise, energy-wise, in season as well. Linfield out of season. And as I said, it was comfortable towards the end. But like Richie said, maybe that man sent off and you're making hard work of it. And they did overall. I felt they made hard work of the tie overall. And if there was one criticism, I was delighted that they got through. But as I keep saying, the one criticism is you just didn't kill them off. And they should have. Like, if that's a Shamrock Rovers, I think they'd score 2 or 3 more, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, and obviously, as you said, Qarabag coming up. So the first leg for Shelbourne at Talca Park is on Wednesday, 7:45 p.m. kickoff. Qarabag very much seasoned in Europe as well. Obviously, we're kind of used to seeing them in Europa League group stages and thereabouts. And they're out of season, but they've taken on FC Twente and RB Salzburg in friendlies this month. So they've been trying to get game time into their legs. As I said, they've been regulars in Europa League group stages, league phases the last 2 seasons, and they got to the round of 16 in the 2023-24 season. Now, the last LOI club that they faced was Dundalk, who they beat 4-1 in the Champions League second qualifying round in 2019-20. So that kind of gives you an idea of their quality. But obviously, Shels are going into this as underdogs, Alan. But the important thing is, of course, they've got to a second qualifying round, which opens doors further down the line. But looking at the Qarabag side of things, huge experience in their team as well. A lot of international caps, a lot of them for Azerbaijan as well. And I think they've a lad, Marko Jankovic in midfield, who's got 50 caps and more for Montenegro. So this is a huge step up for Shels.
This is a big step up, Raf. Yeah, it really is. Like when you're going from Linfield out of season, no disrespect to them, and we've respected them obviously in the build up to their game. This is a major jump, as you said. Regular European competitors in group stages. They've won the domestic league, I think, 11 years on the trot as well. Just looking at their league form last year, they scored 86 goals. They only conceded 19 as well. So defensively, they're very, very strong. And when you're thinking of Shelbourne, we're talking about missed chances in Windsor Park. They may only get 1 or 2 chances against Qarabag. So that just proves how clinical you have to be at this level. So it's a big jump. I'm sure they'll be well prepared for it, travel-wise, logistically as well. It's a fair distance to travel. So it is a big jump and there will be underdogs. But I suppose the big thing for Shelbourne and the big positive is that they do have that kind of security base where they got through the first round and they know they'll be able to drop down. So in some ways, it's a shot to nothing. And that's not to say you'll treat this lightly. They'll be going in with the belief they can get a result, but they know that obviously it's much sterner opposition, much tougher. They are out of season. Is that an advantage? I don't think it's as big an advantage as maybe what it was against Linfield, because these are season campaign or season pro, so they'll be well looked after and looking after themselves. So I think it's a big jump on what I watched last week in that second leg. I think they're up against it, Shelbourne, to be honest with you, Raf.
Yeah, like Qarabag's captain, Badavi Gusainov, has 77 caps for Azerbaijan. So that kind of tells you the level, of course, that in terms of experience in the squad, I think loads of them have 30 plus caps for Azerbaijan. But Richie, when you're looking at how Shels should set up and how they should play it, how would you be looking at them taking it, especially with the pressure kind of easing off, given they know at the very least, if they do go out, they get a third qualifying round in the Europa League and they're guaranteed a playoff round in the Conference League?
Yeah, look, it's amazing that they have that fallback. That was something at Shamrock Rovers that we were always adamant on winning that fourth round, that you have that little bit of a comfort blanket. Now, as Alan said, they won't be taking it lightly. Like they have a really, really strong chance still of going up and beating these. As we said, Qarabag are in pre-season now. Listen, they've played some really good friendlies. They're not playing against Mickey Mouse teams. They're playing against teams like FC Twente and Red Bull, Salzburg and teams like this. I think for Shelbourne, if they have any chance whatsoever, they have to win the first leg. Even a draw at home, it's not really good enough. They're going to be going over to Azerbaijan. It's going to be an absolute nightmare of a flight getting over there. It's probably going to be 35, 36 degrees. It'll be a bit of a cauldron over there that will go into play against them. As I said, you see, when I was at Shamrock Rovers, it was always one of the teams that you think, hope we don't get them. Because one, you have to travel, absolute nightmare getting back then, even for your league games, you know it's going to be really hard. You have the weather. I remember we went over and played in Slovakia like that 34, 35 degrees, and we were trying to warm up in a little corner of the pitch because it was shaded. It wasn't. As soon as the game kicked off, we just sat in the low block for the whole game. So it was a nightmare. Shelbourne are going to be up against something similar. So if they need to have any sort of realistic chance, they got to go and attack the first leg. Similar to against Linfield, they came out really fast in the first leg, but as Alan said again, they didn't put them away. And they're not going to get half the amount of chances as they did against Linfield as they will against Qarabag. And if they don't take them, they're going to be in for a really, really tough two-legged tie.
If they do get through, though, in the Champions League, it would be a third qualifying round, and the draw just being made would be against FCSB of Romania. If you know the history of Steaua Bucharest, that's the connection there, obviously, and then or the Macedonian outfit, KF Skendia. So it'll be either one of those if they get through, but otherwise they do have the fallback in the other competitions. But Shels have made signings, Alan, and this is Jack Henry Francis, who I think you were covering a game for us up in I think it was Derry City against Sligo Rovers last season. I think a lot of that story was about how poor Derry City were on the day, and Sligo were down to 10 men, but the man of the match on that day was Jack Henry Francis. So what does he bring to the table? And obviously for Arsenal fans, they would know him as well, because if they looked at the bench in some of the Champions League games last season, he was kind of sitting there and he was in and around the first team.
You can see the smile across my face when you mentioned his name, Raf. This boy is a fantastic talent, and it's a real coup for Shelbourne to get him as well, because I remember that night very, very well, and he was absolutely outstanding up in the Brandywell against Derry City, who were obviously going for the league as well. Sligo Rovers not in as good a form, but he absolutely ran the show. He was brilliant, and not just in terms of getting on the ball and spraying balls around or kind of running the game with technical ability. His energy levels, he was involved in everything. He was like an old-fashioned midfielder, really, doing a bit of everything, but all to a very high level and a very high standard. So even when you look at that Shelbourne midfield at the moment, and it is quite strong, I thought JJ Lunny and McKinroy played quite well in Windsor Park, but they're fairly similar, both left-footed as well, both like to sit deep, get on the ball and play a little bit. Then you have the attacking ones with maybe Harry Wood and Ali Coote. I think he's a mix of everything, and he'd be a really good addition. To maybe slot in the likes of a McKinroy or the likes of JJ, or you could even play him in one of the advanced roles as well. But he's a brilliant signing. As I said, I was not surprised that Shelbourne got him, because there was murmurings that maybe back to Sligo. But just after he left Sligo, I felt he was so good that someone in England had snapped him up, really. And especially when you see that he was on the bench, because once he played over here for the little period that he did, you're always looking out for the name. And obviously with social media now, where people you follow on Twitter, every time he was on the bench, people from Sligo might have been referencing the fact that he was on the bench, or will he get a chance? Now, I never really felt he was going to make the breakthrough at Arsenal, because what kid makes the breakthrough at Arsenal now unless you're an exceptional talent? And that's nothing against the boy, but I felt he was probably good enough to maybe go out and play in the Championship or League One and start his career there and progress from there. So for Shelbourne to get him, he obviously enjoyed his time over here. He probably enjoyed playing in the league. The fact that Shelbourne are the champions and maybe the European pull as well for him might have been a big coup as to why they got him. But it's a huge signing, huge addition. And when you think, I suppose, you look at all the signings that have been made in recent times, Shamrock Rovers probably always get the best players, if you like. A lot like most leagues around, they might have the pick of the best players, but I think this is a huge signing for Shelbourne, and big for the league as well. He's a brilliant player.
Yeah, and an Ireland underage international as well. And let's move to the Conference League. So St. Pat's through to the second qualifying round of that competition, 2-0 winners away at Hegelmann, Mason Melia and Keane Levy with the goals in each half. And we were talking about Mason Melia last week, Richie, in terms of the pressure that's on him and I suppose the lack of goals collectively that Pats have had. But he had a brilliant game up in Lithuania, and not just in terms of the goal itself, which came early on and Poacher's finish, but his all-round game as well.
Yeah, look, the Lithuanian side kicked them from pillar to post, didn't they? In the first leg they did, and you can see why they kind of done that. You can see he has that little elusiveness. As soon as he gets on that half turn and he gets half yard away from a defender, I loved it for the second goal, for Levy's goal. As soon as he gets that half yard, he just strides past him. And what I loved most was he cut across the defender. So for someone so young to even know to do that, come across the defender like that, the defender has to stop, or else he either fouls him. And I was really impressed with how him and Levy, the partnership that they struck up. I know St. Pat's, look, we've all well documented it that they've been really struggling for goals of late, but I think you see over the last couple of weeks they're starting to get back to what they've been good at. And that's what Pats get the ball out wide, get balls into the box. They have that real raw pace in the team. They do with the likes of Zach Elbazetti. They have Mason Mealy, proper ball carriers like Cian Levy. So I think in European football, it really suits players like that. And if Pats have to go far, I think Mason Mealy is going to be the one to watch.
Yeah, and in the next round they've got, and it'll be this Thursday, the first leg at Richmond Park. So they've got Nomme Kalju of Estonia, who beat Partizani of Albania 2-1 on aggregate after extra time in the first qualifying round. Now, they're in season like Pats, so there's no advantage in terms of that from a Pats point of view. At the moment, they're top four in the Estonian top division. They won the cup last season, and this is their first season in Europe for 5 years, although they used to qualify regularly before then. They're from the Tallinn capital region and have a rivalry with Flora Tallinn, who Shamrock Rovers played a few seasons back. I was trying to get a sense of their system. I think they play 4-3-1-2 is what they played against Partizani, but overall they don't seem to have many senior internationals, not too many Estonian senior internationals or team. I think a lot of under 21s. Top scorer is a midfielder called Christian Kask, who has 7. But again, you're kind of fishing around for bits of info in this, Richie. But as a player, when you've had experiences coming up against teams and clubs where you're not going to know too much, like how much information or how much detail do you really want on some of these teams?
Yeah, as soon as when I was at Rovers, as soon as you find out who you get like that, you get the big booklet, and you're trying to go through and do your own bit of scouting, see what position players play. Look, we all know in the League of Ireland you play against everybody 20 times a year. You do, so you get to know the ins and outs. It's kind of the same players each year, so you know exactly how teams play and you know exactly how players play. But like that, you go into the unknown a little bit, especially if you play a team that hasn't really played in European competition before. We obviously played against Flora Tallinn at the time, and to be fair, Flora were really good. They beat us over the 2 legs. They did. We were really, really poor over, especially at the home leg. We were really poor. We were, and it killed us overall. It did. So for St. Pat's, look, you're playing against a team that's 4th in the Estonian league. It's a really, really good opportunity. Obviously, Stephen Kenny is well used to European football. A lot of the Pats players are well used to European football as well. So you'd like to think that they'll use that know-how and advantage going into these games, because you'd like to see Pats progress, because they really should.
Yeah, and I suppose, Alan, looking at it without not knowing too much about Nomme Kalju, but they're not mugs anyway, because they beat Partizani, who have a lot of European experience, and they did that over 2 legs as well and had to go through extra time as well. But if you're Pats, how are you approaching this first leg, especially given it's at home and where there is this sense that there is an opportunity there?
Yeah, I think similar to what we were saying about Shelbourne, the home thing is a big advantage, and you have to come out of the traps quick. And I think St. Pat's, to be fair, in the last couple of weeks, they've picked up the 2 wins in Europe and the Cup win. I know it wasn't up against much at the weekend and he left a load of players out. But it's just a little bit of momentum that they've been crying out for that they haven't had in weeks in terms of the league form. And a few question marks being raised, certainly in terms of the goals as well. So they have a little bit of momentum behind them. We've seen this time last year as well, where the European run kicked them into gear, Raf. And it can do that as well. We often speak about maybe a cup run. This is something similar, obviously, the European stuff. And Stephen Kenny, who was unbelievable kind of pedigree at European football, as Richie well knows. So he will enjoy this time of the year as well. I know he loves the European games. He was delighted with the performance away from home last week as well. But I would be in agreement with Richie here. Like this, Estonia, I think they're 43rd UEFA rankings. We're obviously 32, I think it is. So and it's not always based on that, but certainly in terms of, you look at the rankings of where they're at, 4th in the domestic league as well. Now I know they won 6-2 at the weekend, but they don't score a lot of goals. In 21 games, I think they've only scored 43 goals. So I would fancy Pats wants to take the game to them, which we know that's what Stephen Kenny does anyway. He likes to be on the front foot. He likes to go after teams, certainly. And I think that has to be the mantra that to go for, especially at home on Thursday night, because there's been a big crowd as well at the games, the European games. There was a big crowd travelled away to Lithuania. The fans will get right behind them as well. And you want to see the teams progress, and these are good opportunities to progress, playing against, as I said, 4th in the Estonian league. You'd like to think, and that's not to underestimate. I don't think we can ever underestimate any of the teams, because I often think those kind of countries similar to ourselves would be looking at an Irish team thinking, well, we're capable of beating them also. So I don't think we should be underestimating any opposition, and we're certainly not doing that. But I think you'd expect Pats to get through this.
Yeah, and so they're top four in the Estonian league. Shamrock Rovers are playing St. Joseph's of Gibraltar in their own game, so that's a 5 o'clock kickoff at Europa Sports Park, and that's on Thursday. Now they could have got Cliftonville, but Cliftonville lost 5-4 in aggregate to St. Joseph's in the first qualifying round after extra time, and St. Joseph's did play an LOI team not so very long ago. They lost 3-2 on aggregate to Shels last season in the first qualifying round, although they did beat Larne the previous year before getting then in that same season, getting trashed 11-0 over two legs by Slavia Prague. So on paper, it looks like Shamrock Rovers are heavy favourites as the seeded team as well, Richie.
It's a great opportunity for Shamrock Rovers. They're going to go over to Gibraltar. The weather will be okay. I think I checked it. It's probably going to be 22, 23 degrees. So that won't be a factor. I know a couple of years ago, I remember us having the chance of getting Lincoln Redhams, and we were like that, checking the weather all the time, and like that, it's up in the 40s. It is, but I checked it there. It's not going to be too bad for them. As you said, Shamrock Rovers are really, really seasoned. You'd have to probably put them in a similar bracket to Qarabag, the way they go about their business. They always seem to get the job done, and they're there or thereabouts with the group stage. So it's a great opportunity for them. Playing St. Joseph's. Look at St. Joseph's. They scraped past Cliftonville, didn't they? And they finished 7th in the Irish League. So Shamrock Rovers are heavy favourites. Obviously, the away leg being forced will probably suit them as well. I'd imagine they'll sit in for the first 20, 30 minutes, get a little feel for them, see what they're like. And then you'd like to think as soon as they get them back to Tallaght that they'll absolutely have a right go with them there. Like.
Yeah, I was looking at the stats, Alan, how many times you played in Europe. I think it was 13 games over Champions League, Europa League, UEFA Cup. Is there a muscle memory thing of kind of getting used to Europe? Does it feel very different? I suppose, obviously, as Richie said, it's very different to play in the league where you know everybody, but there is, even thinking back, say, Manchester United in the 90s, to get to 99, it was quite a journey of like a lot of lessons learned and a lot of heavy defeats, a lot of painful defeats before they kind of learned how to get through it. So from your own point of view, is that a process in Europe sort of to just learn the process of what Europe is like?
Yeah, absolutely, Raf. Certainly, in my experiences of it, it's all new at the start. But like everything else, the more you do it, the more you get used to it. And there was a real enjoyment about it as well. I used to love playing Europe because obviously, I suppose the way I used to play, it would suit kind of players like myself who like to get on the ball, the technical side of where the league here was rough and tumble at the best of times, and there wasn't a whole lot of that in my day. It might have changed now. I was born in the wrong era, I think, Raf, but certainly the European games, yeah, I used to love and enjoy. And there was that kind of little bit of unknown where you're going up against opposition. Richie's right. The familiarity of playing against the same players week in, week out here, it can get a bit monotonous. But when you're playing against different teams, and then you often used to find the bigger the club as well, it used to really kind of turn you on, and you'd get really excited for the games as well. So I think that's for Shamrock Rovers. It is over a period of time. You look at some of the other clubs that are in Europe, and no disrespect to them. Shelbourne, is it their first time? Like obviously the Champions League in 20 years. They were in Europe last year for the first time in a long time. Pats a bit more regularly. But Shamrock Rovers are doing it year in, year out now. And you do get to a level where it's almost an expectancy. And I think the added addition of the Conference League is huge for countries the size of ourselves. Why it was brought in, really. And I have an expectation now that you'd like to see the likes of Shamrock Rovers or whoever wins the league, that the champions route, like we spoke a lot about in terms of Shelbourne, and the fallback of being able to drop down the rounds once you get through that first round. You'd like to think we can get a club representing us year in, year out now in that Conference League, and that should be an expectation as well on the club's behalf. Sean Boyd spoke about the financial reward as well, I think last week, in terms of what it brings for the players. Richie set up a summer camp off the back of all his bonuses as well in Europe with Shamrock Rovers. So these are the incentives, Rafts, that you look forward to as well as a player, that might not come week in, week out with, I suppose, the league stuff. So it's huge. It's a brilliant time for all the players as well, because there's a lot of eyes on it as well. There's a lot of interest in terms of maybe TV coverage and people speaking out of it outside the game as well, if you were to get a run or get to a group stage. So I think it's a brilliant time for the players. They all enjoy it. They all love it. They're travelling away, going from game to game. It's a brilliant time, and it was a time that I used to absolutely love. So I'm sure the players nowadays love it even more. And as I said, the fact that we have the Conference League, I think, is huge, because it should be an expectation, and it should be something. And I know they're all aiming for that, but it should become an expectation that that's what we should be achieving year in, year out.
Yeah, the Deportivo ties must bring back some great memories. I remember watching them on TV at the time as well. Obviously, it was a 0-0 in the first leg, and then people who mightn't remember Deportivo or how strong they were like they were a proper team.
I
Ah,
went to
serious
that.
team, yeah.
I was only 14 then. I remember my dad brought me to it. It was brilliant. But like that's how you get young kids that get the interest in the League of Ireland, isn't it? And when you get them big toys and as you said, the glamour toys, like you want more kids, people who don't normally go to games to go, and then they get the buzz for it and the love for it, and like that. Then they're bringing the kids every single week, and they're going telling their pals. That's exactly how you get to grow the league. And you see, for someone like Shamrock Rovers, like you see how big their crowds have got year on year, and it's exactly because of that. The success that you have breeds more people coming down to watch you play.
Yeah, and even with that, like those times were amazing memories. And but that was the old system as well, Raf. So that was like the
Yeah,
last qualifying round to get into a Champions League group stage, which was like it would have been an unbelievable achievement back then. Because as you said, you're playing against Deportivo La Coruña, who were in the semi-final of the Champions League, I think the year before, and
yeah.
household names, Valeron, Diego Tristan. I remember going over to that stadium, the Riazor and all. It was 0-0 up until I think it was the 65th minute. Jason Byrne had a great chance with a header. But yeah, like, and that's what I'm saying. Even since then, you look at the transformation of those kind of European competitions. And if that was back then, we would have dropped down maybe to the lesser league, and then you drop down to another one, and they would have been in a group stage. So that's why I'm saying, like, the lads nowadays have such opportunities, and good luck to them. It's brilliant for them all. And for someone like me who loves the league, and you see the lads, the chances and the opportunities that they have now to play in Europe on a regular basis, not just kind of get through 2 or 3 rounds, to get themselves to a group stage. And I still believe like we're a good bit off maybe a Champions League group stage or anything like that. You have to be realistic in what you're aiming for. But certainly in terms of a conference group stage, I think that's a realistic achievement for our clubs year in, year out.
Yeah, summer 2004, that was the Deportivo tie, which I was doing the junior cert that year. That's how long ago that was. It
Oh,
makes
yeah.
makes me feel
You're
old when I
making me
think about
feel
that.
ancient here, lads. I still feel young.
Yeah, no, it just does make me feel very old. But actually, in terms of Shamrock Rovers, Leon Pohls is now leaving the club. Richie, I suppose, they have backups in terms of Lee Stacey will step up as number two, and Stephen Bradley was also talking about Alex Noonan and Todd Bazunu as sort of young lads that he would be happy to throw in if necessary. But how do you reflect on Leon Pohls' time at Shamrock Rovers? I suppose as a player, I suppose the difficulty of having to be a number two for large periods in a foreign country as well, but also more importantly as a person in terms of how he integrated over here.
Yeah, look, as you said, Raf, it's really hard to be a number two. It's something that I could never be or never do. Like to be there and be that support for someone knowing that you're not going to play. That must be really, really difficult. Anytime I wasn't playing, I'd always have a face on me. Now I'd always get behind the lads and wish them well and try and like get them up for the games and stuff like that. But deep down, you'd be like, "This is a nightmare. This is." You know what I mean? If you weren't going to be on the pitch, because that's what you train really hard all week and you live your life like a professional to go and showcase that on a Friday, or else in them big European games, and you don't get the opportunity. And he was someone that still used to come in, train really hard. Anybody that needed any extra work, he'd stay out and help you. And I think that's why Stephen Bradley actually gave him the opportunity then to become the number one. I think he's seeing the way he acted around the place and seeing the potential that he had. And look, he done really well. He won league titles at Shamrock Rovers. He was part of a team that got to the group stages twice. So for someone like him to come over to Ireland and to experience that must be absolutely incredible. And good luck to him going over to his new team. I know they're playing European competition as well. So if you can emulate something similar over there than he did at Shamrock Rovers, he'd be flying.
Yeah, 6 year spell, so good innings there, Shamrock Rovers. Now we're going to talk about the FAI Cup second round briefly, and also look ahead to some of the LOI games as well. So the draw for the third round will be at 12:30 p.m. on Tuesday, and a lot of the games in the second round were fairly one-sided. I don't think there was any real surprises in them. And just reading Owen Doyle's column, which was before the games, so this is on RT.ie /sport. So every Friday, Owen Doyle has a column on the website. Always well worth a read. There was a paragraph in it where he says there was a time when a well-drilled amateur team could rattle a League of Ireland side, but modern football, especially at League of Ireland level, has changed. Nutrition, sports science, and sleep routines are now as crucial as tactical plans. These players are full-time in everything they do, and crucially, they're in season. And Richie, I suppose that does ring true. Like the chances of, whether it was, Castlebar Celtic gave Longford Town a good run for their money, but ended up losing 6-3 in the end. Like you're not gonna get too many shocks at that, in that round of the competition.
Yeah, like you probably would have seen it a few years ago where you might get a little upset. You see it in England all the time where you might get a little upset in the FA Cup. But you see now, Raf, everybody in the League of Ireland and in the Premier Division, they're all full-time footballers. And as Doyle said, nobody's having to go to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and finish at 5 o'clock, rush up the road to train. When I was at Dundalk, I used to travel up with Dame Massey, and he was a full-time electrician. He'd be coming in a Snickers, he would. We'd be jumping in the car and baiting up to Dundalk. We'd be nearly late because he'd be after being in town and work. And I used to have so much admiration for him. I used to think, how do you do that? Like, it was crazy. And then he'd still go and play at a really high level. But you see now, nobody's doing that. Everybody's full-time footballer. They're going in, they're getting their gym stuff, their prehab done. So for a team like as you said, Crumlin United or Moctus or someone like this to go and beat a League of Ireland team, it's kind of impossible for them. I know the lads probably all still fancy themselves to go out and cause an upset, but I think you see the realistic chances that they have when the games actually come around and you see some of the score lines, you know what I mean? But that's just where the League of Ireland is at the moment. Like,
Yeah, for the Premier Division teams and some of the teams that are going to be contenders, maybe in the top end of the First Division, Alan, like if you're looking at it this season, who do you feel needs a good cup run or even to go on and win it or get to a final, maybe to either galvanise fans for European money or also just for that kind of belief in terms of like trying to kick on and become sort of title challengers in the future?
Yeah, I think they'll all have their eyes on it, Raf, in terms of the fact that what it offers now, the cup as well, with the European stuff too as well. So I think you're looking at the moment, I suppose, the teams in form, Sligo Rovers, who were known as a cup team as well. And all my years growing up, they always had a good cup run, and it was almost kind of expected in and around the town, because you never felt like you were going to win a league. So it was always kind of a big thing, the cup in the town. And that's probably the feeling for a lot of maybe the regional teams around. But certainly the fact that they're all still in the hat, I think it makes for the draw be really interesting tomorrow. I'm sure it's going to throw up maybe a big tie, which we obviously didn't see in the last round. And all the big boys are still left in it. So I love the cup. I absolutely love it, Raf. And I love the fact that we still keep the cup as one of the main competitions. Obviously, it's lost its glamour, as we know, in the UK and places, but I absolutely love the FAI Cup. It's our showpiece day still, come the end of the year, playing in the Aviva Stadium. And it's a fantastic opportunity because if you are kind of lucky in the draw, you only have to win 3-4 matches to get yourself to a final, which is an unbelievable day out for everybody as well. So I think there's huge opportunities. You're looking at maybe Bohemians as well, doing well in the league. They will fancy themselves. I think they all will, Raf, at this moment in time, because you're looking at it and you're still thinking there's a few first division teams. I know there's a couple of junior teams still left in it as well. So as I said, if you were to be lucky and maybe get yourself a lucky draw at the next stage and then a quarter final, all of a sudden you find yourself in a semi-final and you might have to beat one of the big teams then to get yourself to a final. So I think there's huge opportunities for them all. And right now at the moment, they'll all fancy their chance in it.
Yeah, just to touch on that, that was my favourite day out by a mile, playing in over in Ireland. One of the reasons as well is there's no game after it. You know, when that's done, it's dusted, you can go out and you can proper celebrate. Sometimes when you're at Dundalk or Shamrock Rovers or you see even a Shelbourne or whatever, if you go and win a league, sometimes the following week you have another game where like that you're going for a cup run or you always have something else that's happening. Sometimes we had European games at Rovers and you can't proper let the hair down, where the cup final, like we won it with Dundalk 2014, and like that, everybody's back on the bus up to Dundalk, and it's brilliant. It's a great occasion, not just for the players, but for the families as well, because as everyone well knows, families have a lot of sacrifices as well. They miss out on a lot of things. I know my wife and kids did, and when they get to have a day like that, and they get to come onto the pitch, which and it's just an amazing experience. And I'm sure for every player in the League of Ireland, that's a big dream for them to go and win that.
Yeah, I'm glad Richie said that as well, Raf. Just in terms of even for me covering it, I was never fortunate enough to play. We got beat. I was still in a quarter final when we were at Shels, the good Shels team, and I missed the penalty in a quarter final up in Derry, knocked out in a penalty shootout. My uncle scored the winning goal in an '83 Cup final. He's more famous than anyone in the family. I'm still living off that for Sligo Rovers. So I love the cup, as I said, and maybe the Sligo thing and the Sligo connection. I remember in '94 we were all going up to Lansdowne Road. Jerry Carr scored the winning goal as well, and it was an unbelievable homecoming. All this kind of stuff that goes with it, and now the fact that it's in the Aviva. the crowds have grown year on year, even covering it. It's my favourite day. I absolutely love the cup, and I'm glad Richie said that as well, even from a player's point of view. Because I do, yeah, it'll come around now, the English season. You look at the FA Cup and teams not caring about it, and I get it in terms of their priorities and different things, but I always still feel as though there should be a place for the FAI Cup, and there always will be here. Fantastic competition, and seems to be getting bigger and bigger as well, in terms of the incentives that's there now, also with the Europe thing, and as I said, the crowds that fill out the Aviva come Cup final day. So brilliant competition.
Yeah, and the final will be live on RTÉ, as will the third round onwards. So one game per round from the third round all the way. Then semi-finals as well. We'll have both of those, and then the final itself, which is always a great day to cover as well. But just from a couple of the goals that were scored, I don't know if you caught Victor Ojenvuna's one against Wexford, Richie, and then for Sligo Rovers, James McManus's half volley as well. So there's two quality. I don't know which one you can say is better because they're quite different, but they're both cracking.
Unbelievable goals, both of them. Obviously, they're a little bit different. They are. My favourite was McManus's goal. Absolute peach of a volley. Especially off that Astro tub up there. Sometimes the ball can, when the ball's coming out and it's bouncing, it has a regular bounce. But over there, up in Oreo with the Astro, it has a bit of an irregular bounce. It does, and he's caught it absolutely brilliant. And do you know what? Just to touch on Sligo, they've been absolutely incredible over the last couple of weeks. If they keep that form going, no team is going to want to get them in the cup. And then I even think teams in the league are going to be looking over their shoulders thinking, they're coming for us here. And when you have the likes of Cork that's underneath them, they're going to be thinking, we have no chance here. So I've been really, really impressed with Sligo because John Russell's really good. He was a very good player, he was, and he's a good manager. And sometimes he can get a bit of a raw deal down there. He always seems to lose his best players and stuff like that. So it's great to see them back on track now.
Yeah, so that's Shamrock Rovers getting past Wexford, and obviously Sligo Rovers beating Dundalk 2-0 away from home in those games. Another shout out for good goal. Joe Adams' free kick for Kerry to equalise very late on against Athlone Town that forced extra time, and then Kerry eventually went through. But a bit of interest in terms of Sligo Rovers, Alan. I don't know if you caught Kevin Zefi and his the fact that he played. He was basically just a trialist against Mansfield Town in a friendly, and he scored as well. But there's a sense that there's interest from Scottish clubs, from EFL clubs as well. But when you actually look at his career, obviously starting out in the Shamrock Rovers reserves back in 2020 as a 15-year-old, then getting to go to Inter Milan, and then now he's at Roma and under contract there. But he's kind of inexperienced in a way as a player at the age of 20, in that he hasn't played that much first team football. So I don't know what you've made of his trajectory, and even whether there's any chance of Sligo getting their hands on him more permanently.
Yeah, it was interesting that he was over. I didn't realise it until obviously the game last week, Raf, because it was very kind of little talk about it. But then, and even then, it was like trialist. It wasn't Zefi marked down on the team sheet. It was trialist. And then, of course, social media started letting it out who it was and stuff. But yeah, I suppose his name has always cropped up because of the Inter Milan thing. But maybe the young fella's career has just settled down a little bit now, because people probably get carried away with that as well. He was always a talented boy. You'd see clips of him and people talking about him, underage teams and the Irish underage teams and different things. But I think it just goes to show the different pathways, Raf, for everyone. Everyone does it differently. There's no set way. There's no right way. His path has taken him on a completely different journey. And you could argue that maybe if he was over here playing the national underage teams, he would have been already established in a Premier Division team, potentially Shamrock Rovers or wherever it is around the league. And he could have 50 games under his belt right now at men's level football. And you're saying there he's nearly 20, he's inexperienced, because he wouldn't have had the exposure maybe to go into obviously an Inter Milan first team or Roma first team, wherever. So the pathway is different. There's no set way. There's no right way. Richie's way was different to my way. I'm sure Richie has pros and cons to what his life was like from maybe 15, 16 onwards. I certainly would have different views on the pros and cons of it as well. But I think it's important for the kid to go somewhere now at the age that he's at and get regular football and get playing with a team where he establishes himself and playing in the first team. And if that's Sligo Rovers, brilliant. If it's not, I also read that there is interest from clubs across the water, whether it be Scotland, England, wherever. But just for the kid, in terms of his development as well, I think he's at the age now where he does need to maybe settle down and play in a first team and get some regular football.
Yeah, and Sligo have also signed the left-sided defender Sean Stewart as well from Cliftonville, and he said that John Russell had been chasing him for a while, so it looks like a good move for him. But last week we were talking about the upcoming Sligo and Cork game this Friday, which is going to be huge in terms of what could happen towards the bottom end of the table. So I think Richie felt last week that Cork are very much in trouble, and regardless of whether they lose this game against Sligo this Friday, that they look like they're a team that is on the way down. Alan, like, what's your thought on it? Like, if they lose, is that them sort of like, even if it's not mathematical, that is them done?
Yeah, I can't see how to stay in the division, to be honest with you, Raf. You just look at not just the on the pitch stuff, but off the pitch as well. The fans seem really disgruntled with the ownership. There's major discontent in terms of the ticket prices. They haven't got the bounce from the new manager coming in. He looks very kind of, you listen to his interviews after the match, a frustrated figure for somebody who's only in the door of the club. Normally, kind of a manager like that would be kind of not giving off false positivity, but he'd be certainly upbeat and positive about maybe kind of what he's there to do and get the team progressing up the table. And even you look at, he looks like a frustrated figure already with some of the games and the performances. Now, I think the performances have been okay, but they're not getting results. And when you contrast that to Sligo Rovers, and even though things were looking a little bit bleak in the early part of the season, look at how upbeat and positive everything seems to be at the moment off the back of 2 or 3 results. And to be fair to John Russell, he always maintained that positivity. We said even in the games, Raft, in the early part of the season, they were a team that loved to attack and score goals, and if they could just sort out the defensive issues, they would certainly find themselves maybe moving up the table, and that's been the case. I think McLean has done well since he's come in, been a good signing as well. They've also signed McManus, who we mentioned, not just the goal, but I think he's a very good player, plays kind of with a maturity beyond his years. I've always liked young McManus. O'Kane offers him something different on the left as well. So they've signed well, whereas I think Cork are bringing in lads with, there's a little bit of unknown to the league as well. And yeah, I just can't see how to get out of the mess that they're in, to be honest with you, Raf. And if I was kind of Galway and Waterford, I'd be looking, I agree with Richie, I'd be looking over my shoulder now at Sligo Rovers. I think Sligo Rovers are gone away from Cork, and they'll be looking up the table rather than over their shoulder at Cork. They'll have their sights firmly set on the likes of Galway, Waterford, teams above them that they can reel back in to that playoff. And if I was John Caulfield, John Coleman, those managers, I'm sure they'll be thinking the same at the moment with the form Sligo Rovers are in.
Yeah, those teams are playing each other. We'll touch on them very shortly. But from Bohs and Derry City, who are also playing each other this Friday at the Ryan McBride Brandywell Stadium. Richie, it was just interesting how the selections during the cup weekend. So Bohs against Killester, Donny Carney. They won 7-0, but they rested a lot of the main first teamer, Douglas James Taylor, Dawson Devoy, Dale Rooney, Ross Tierney weren't needed off the bench at all, and obviously the result kind of shows that. And then Derry City against Treaty United, they won fairly comfortably as well, 5-1 away from home. Obviously Treaty United a step up in terms of being a first division team, but they did start with Duffy, Connolly, Diallo, Ferguson, White, and the two Boyces as well, all starting. So what's your thoughts on that? I suppose building up to their own head to head now, where some of them have been playing games, I suppose, in the cup, and the others have not.
Yeah, look, I fully expected Pohls to rest a lot of players. Obviously, with the draw that they got in the FAI Cup, it was a great draw for them. They were obviously off the back of a great victory against Galway. Lads were full of confidence that had just played in that game. So to rest them and give an opportunity to some of the fringe players who haven't been playing, and you even see the likes of Colin Whelan coming in scoring a hat-trick, that'll give him a confidence boost. So Bohemians, they're motoring nicely. They are. Obviously for Derry, it was a little bit more difficult. They were playing Treaty away. Treaty are a decent side. They are a little bit of a tricky toy for them. So they kind of had to start with a little bit of a stronger team. Obviously they ended up running out comfortable winners in the end. But there was always going to be a team that they had to put out was going to be really strong against them. So going into the game, I think it's really important for either side just to get the win. I think if it's a draw, I think it just opens the lead a little bit more for Shamrock Rovers, and it makes it a little bit more comfortable for them. So for either team, they need to go out and have a right go at it, because, like as I said, if you go out and draw the game, you may as well have a go. If you're going to have any aspirations of going on to win the league, you need to go and win that game.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Galway and Waterford earlier, Alan, in terms of that they do need to look behind, over their shoulders to where Sligo Rovers are now. There was a YouTube comment that was flagged to me. I don't really look at YouTube comments, but somebody mentioned it was a Galway United fan under the last week's episode that a lot of our mentions of Galway often just revolve around John Caulfield or Moses Dyer. So I'm going to ask you the question now and you're the only rule you have is you can't mention either of those people, but in terms of Galway's form going forward, obviously Stephen Walsh getting himself back on the score sheet against Sligo Rovers with a good header, and then Dave Hurley obviously scoring a great goal as well. And then from the Waterford point of view, with Tommy Lonergan, getting him helping himself to a couple of goals, which will help his confidence against St. Moctas, and Pod Jamont also scoring. How is this match set up?
Yeah, I think it's a big game for the reasons that I outlined a couple of minutes ago about Sligo Rovers, Raf, because the form that they're in, probably one of the most formed teams in the league, and certainly looking upwards on the table. These two, this is a huge game now. You look at Galway as well, it was just important that they got back to winning ways, albeit against the junior team, but only 2-0 as well. When you see some of the thumpings that some of the other teams gave some of the junior teams, they'll probably be disappointed that they didn't score more goals. And I think it's only one win in six as well for Galway. So the league form is fairly worrying. The last four, they've only picked up 1 point out of 12, 3 defeats as well. So John Coffey, look, a very experienced manager. I think I mentioned the name, sorry.
That's
But
it.
just, I've lost already. But an experienced manager. So he will be under no illusions just in terms of, I suppose, where they're at the moment and what they need to do. And I think Coleman as well mentioned it the night they got hammered by Derry City. He says, look, the honeymoon period is well and truly over for him. And they need to start picking up points and the league table to bump them up the table a little bit. Tommy Lonergan, I think, signing permanently as well is a big plus for them. I like Tommy, good young player as well, and I think he's formed a good little partnership with Hammond. And they're probably the reason that I give them more of a chance of bumping themselves up the table, those two. But I watched Waterford a few weeks ago, and they were very, very poor, I have to say, against Sligo Rovers in a game. Then they came out, they beat Cork, I think. They got the cup victory as well. So it's a big game, Raf. It really is, because as I said, for the reasons that Sligo Rovers are in such good form, this is a massive game for both of them, and it's hard to call. I would slightly just edge Waterford. I think Galway are in really poor form. I would slightly edge towards Waterford.
And no mention of Moses Dyer, so you've actually
Yeah.
you've drawn the game, as in might not be a victory, but anyway, look, let's talk transfers as well. So goalkeeper Josh Keeley is leaving Tottenham Hotspur for Luton Town after a solid season on loan at Leyton Orient. We spoke about him a few weeks back, but I suppose the big news is Evan Ferguson to AS Roma. Now we spoke about it last week in quite a bit of detail as this deal was being slowly hashed out. Obviously going on loan with an option to buy, and obviously Richie and Keith Tracy last week sort of gave their thoughts on that. So Alan, what have you made of it? It looks like it is done. He's in Rome at the moment, getting a medical done. So it's a big move. But just interested to see what you think in terms of the pros and cons.
Yeah, it's a huge move, Raf. I suppose just it depends on, and there's no guarantees in football, but I would have been looking somewhere more kind of not as high profile and somewhere that maybe you're going to play regularly. Because if you think like how long is it since he played regularly, then the West Ham thing as well. Now you're probably looking at that thinking Graham Potter relationship with the manager, he look after me. But because of the forwards that they have, and Bowen kind of played through the middle a lot as well rather than on the wing, it was very hard to get any game time. So I always felt with Evan that the next move I think is the most crucial one. And I'm looking at Roma and the scenes last night, and I'm arriving in the airport, and I know it's probably he's absolutely buzzing, and it's big news, and they'll get right behind him, and for him it must be he must be on such a high as well. But I just think he needs to play. Now, that's not to say he won't play over there, but it's such a high profile move in a high profile league. I don't know. I hope it works out. I really do, Raf. I really hope it works out for him. But I don't know. I would have been thinking maybe more championship level and somewhere that he's going to play regularly week in, week out, just to get the game time and get a regular run of games. And then you'll see the talent come through. But if you're trying to go kind of stop, start and play a couple of games and sitting on the bench, and then you're not sure if you're playing the week in, week out, like Richie spoke about it earlier, you're training all week to play at the weekend. And when you're not playing, like the head drops, it really does. And I hope it works out, Raf. I really do. But just in terms of it being so high profile, I'd have concerns as well.
Yeah. In terms of it being a loan though, Richie, do you look at it and think maybe it'll be 1 year if it doesn't necessarily work out, and he's only 20 at the moment, that it's not necessarily the end of the world given the age of where he's at, or do you kind of look at it the other way and it's not great developmentally as well?
Yeah, listen, I've obviously had a few loan spells myself, and I'd be someone who, if I'm going somewhere, I'd be really all in. So I'd move, like my wife gave out to me so much she did, because every time I went on loan, we moved house. We moved house, I think 4 years in a row or something like that. So she used to always give out to me, because I was always a person that was all in. Obviously, Evan is going to have to move as well. He's going to move to Rome, which is, it'll be great for him. Massive club, big fan base. I said it last week. If he goes there and scores a couple of goals early on, it could really send him up into the clouds, and he could have a great time. But like as Alan said, like there's other players there. Like if he doesn't score for a game or two, he's on the bench. That's a fact. Like, because the other lads who are there are going to be chomping at the bit and training to take his place. I'd probably be a little bit similar to Alan. I would have loved him to go a similar route to like what Troy Parrott done. You see him, he goes there, not as much pressure on him. He goes, enjoys his football, scores loads of goals, and you see how well everybody spoke about him last year. Listen, Evan Ferguson is a top talent, and it probably shows a little bit about his character as well, that he thinks, no, do you know what, I can go over to Rome and I can be a success. So it's brilliant, and hands down to him for doing that. I hope it works out for him. But if it doesn't, Raf, as you said, he's only a young boy. He's still only 20 years of age. He can go back to Brighton. Brighton are an incredible club. I'm sure they'll really look after him. And if it doesn't work out there, he can still go back somewhere, and he'll be minded, and he'll be well looked after.
Just on that, Raf, as well, the worry you would have, like you look at the competition, I suppose, what he's up against, and the Ukrainian boy Dovbek, is it,
Yeah.
who's very similar to Evan, you know, that big kind of powerful presence up top. So is he going to go with kind of two players up top? That's another thing that you'd have to kind of worry about in terms of the modern game. A lot of them go with one up top, and maybe you could play with one number 10 or two number 10s, or whatever the case may be. Two wingers. El Shaarawy is one of the wingers that's there, obviously plays off the left. You look at Dybala, who's high profile, plays off a centre forward. Now, that would be unbelievable if it was Dybala off Evan. But you're kind of looking at the Ukrainian boy thinking, is it going to be off him? There's a young Argentinian boy who they've high hopes for as well.
Sule, isn't it? Yeah.
Sule, he's only
Yeah.
22, but he played a lot of games last year as well. So that's the thing, as I said, with it sounds great in theory and all, Roma, big club, Serie A, all those kind of things. Absolutely, it sounds like a no-brainer. But when you consider the opposition and what you're up against, and as I keep saying, the most important thing for Evan in his next move, whether it be Roma or whether it be Fleetwood Town, is that he plays every week. You know, now I'm not suggesting he goes to one of those, but I would have thought maybe Norwich or lower ranked, kind of middle of the road championship team. And as I said, like Richie will tell you, like there's no guarantees in football. You can't just turn up and say, oh, I'm going to play, or when you're in negotiations with a manager, you're not going, like they'll all tell you, yeah, the reason I'm bringing you in is because you're going to play, but I still think you need to kind of have your wits about you in terms of maybe your club selection, that you think, okay, what am I up against here? The likelihood is I am going to play most weeks, or the likelihood is I'm up against stiff competition here. Like I'd say Norwich might be an easier one to get into than Roma. So look, these are all the things I'm sure they've all discussed. And that would be my just my worry when you look at what they're up against. And as Richie said then, it's ruthless. Fans are ruthless. Them Italian fans, absolute maniacs, you know. It looked brilliant last night, the scenes and all. And if he was to score and get off and up and running, I'm sure they'd be behind him and they'd love him. You look at McTominay at Napoli, but it's a big move. I've said it all along, not just off the back of this. All along with Evan, his next move, I think, is his most crucial. And he needs to play, and I hope to God it works out for him.
Yeah, no, their fans are passionate. I've been in the Curve or Sud for a Roma game before, like 11 years ago now, and yeah, they're passionate. I wouldn't want to be getting on their wrong side. But I think the other thing for Evan probably is just the option to buy. There's not a lot of clubs that be able to, given how much his value is. I think he was being valued at 100 million a number of years ago. It seems to be closer to the sort of 30, 40 million. So that probably rules out a lot of clubs on that front in terms of negotiations. Before we go, Alan, you were on co-coms for the France-Germany game in the Women's Euros on Saturday with Des Kern, and what a game, I suppose, first off in terms of the drama, but all credit has to go to Germany. We'll be talking to Rachel Graham very shortly in more detail about the competition, but just your thoughts on that match, just how it played out, the drama, everything, and Germany's character as well.
It was absolutely amazing, Raf. Probably one of the best games of football I've ever seen. It was phenomenal from start to finish. It really was. And when you think France, who were one of the favourites, obviously going into it, favourites to win that match, Germany coming off the back of a bad defeat to Sweden as well. You're looking for a big reaction. Then to have Hendrik sent off after 15 minutes. they go behind from the penalty as well. You're thinking this is a mountain to climb. Then they got a great goal themselves. And I think that was the key point of the whole night, Raf, was that they scored so soon after going down to 10. So straight away they had something to hold on to and fight for. And by God, did they fight. It was unbelievable, Raf. The energy, the effort, the two girls in midfield, Sense and Nuskin, were absolutely unbelievable. The ground they covered. The wingers, Eula Brand, Clara Bull, incredible. Richie's big into his stats on running power and all these things, and he's tweeting pictures of his runs all the time, Raf, and he'll be able to tell you about K's running a match. And I think Julia Brand was up on 12K, 13K, some of the players. It was just unreal. Then the goalkeeper, Katrin Amberger, pulls off one of the most unbelievable saves you've ever seen. I'm sure plenty of people have seen it online. It was unreal. Then they get themselves through extra time while they're out on their feet. Then they take unbelievable penalties. She steps up and takes a penalty after saving 3 saves. It had everything. It had everything. It was absolutely brilliant, Raf. Loved it. And I'd love to see Germany go on and win it now. I know they have Spain in the next round. Tough ask. Spain, as we know, the favourites. I would give them a chance. I give them a big chance. The only concern I have, not so much that they're playing Spain, just how much that game has taken out of them legs and energy-wise, because they put so much into it. I know they've the few days to recover, a couple of injuries as well, but I'd love to see a fresh Germany go up against a fresh Spain, because they will cause them problems. But I'm roaring them on from now, Raf. I loved it. Everything about it. They were thundering into all old school stuff, but stuff you love to see. Passion, fire in the belly. It was amazing. It was a brilliant, brilliant game.
France didn't get the memo. I think it's the Gary Lineker phrase: 22 players take to the field, and in the end, the Germans win. That could still happen in this tournament. I can't completely rule it out. But anyway, look, Alan and Richie, thanks very much for your time. We'll chat soon.
Thanks, Raf.
All right, delighted to be joined now by Shelbourne's Rachel Graham, and we'll talk WLOI later on. Obviously, it's getting to crunch time, the Euros, with semi-finals to come on Tuesday and Wednesday, and of course the final on Sunday. So, Rachel, thanks for coming on, and I suppose just going to look back now on the teams that went out in the quarterfinals over the last few days. So, starting with Norway losing 2-1 against Italy. I suppose it's the same narrative we've had about them the whole time. Hugely talented individuals, but yet they can't seem to find an answer in a major tournament to sort of match the abilities they have.
Yeah, I think that's exactly nail on the head. They have all these great players, but they're not really performing well as a team, and it's kind of the story of them so far in this tournament, definitely, where it's again great players, good team, but underperforming, underachieving. And I just think against Italy, they're obviously the underdog going into the game, but they're probably, they're not really a pushover of a team. They're not probably as much of an underdog as they're making them out to be. But I think for Norway, it's definitely a chance that's definitely been missed up by them to get themselves into a semi-final. And like I said, Italy probably the better team until Norway equalised in the game, and then they almost came alive, Norway, and showed what they could do and what they are capable of. But you can't leave it that late in the game, or that late in a tournament almost, to kind of start playing how they did. So like I said, look, Italy, no pushover, but I just think even how they celebrate, they probably realise themselves that, we are the underdog here. And if this is as far as we go, it's almost the same as winning the tournament to them. They've done amazingly well, Italy. A couple of good players. Girelli up front, who's, proven to be one of the better players in the tournament, a great kind of goal scorer in around the box, and proved that then against Norway. But I think for Norway, you could see the disappointment on their faces at the end, that again, it's a tournament where they've underperformed, underachieved, missed a great opportunity to get themselves to a semi-final. So, look, I don't know what the problem is, whether it's a mentality thing or an unhappy camp. I don't really know, but it does definitely seem to be a common theme with them.
Yeah, I suppose with the new manager that they had brought in, that the focus was actually on trying to create a harmonious group more than anything else. And well, we don't know what the harmony was like behind the scenes. But if you're going back to say how you'd assess Ada Hegerberg's tournament as a whole, because there's some real highs and lows in there, what would you say about it?
Yeah, and look, she's obviously, one of the top players who's been around for a long time. And I think the thing with her is she's more of like a goal scorer. I don't think she's, she doesn't get the ball, dribble and beat players. It's more she wants to be running towards the goal, and she's a great finisher in front of goal. But look, she has been out injured for a while, and she did take that break away from international football more so, for personal reasons, or, making a stand kind of against the standards that were being set by Norway. But it probably hasn't been the best tournament for her, I would say. Obviously missing the penalty in the game is not great. And even it's probably a common theme throughout the tournament now where these missed penalties, but they're all poor penalties. It's not even that they're hitting them well or it's great saves, they're poor penalties. And look, she does well to kind of bounce back and get the equaliser. And I think even when you seen she scored the equaliser, it almost like she didn't even celebrate. It was just more so relief for having missing the penalty. But yeah, look, she's obviously a huge name in women's football, but probably in this tournament, if you didn't know her going into it, you probably might not even pick her out. But like I said, I think she needs to be in a team that, are dominating games and can just get a team torn and she can run towards goal or, breaking around the box. But I just think the way Norway have played this tournament is probably not the way that suits her.
Yeah, and then in terms of the Nordic teams, Sweden also eliminated, but it required a massive England comeback in that game last Thursday. And I suppose from Sweden's point of view, imagine they're kicking themselves a little bit, and it might come down to say the manager and a bit of the sort of game management and substitutions mostly.
Yeah, I think another team now that are kicking themselves and like they performed well in the tournament, beating Germany 4-1 the game before that. And then like they started the game so well, they were a much better team in the first half, and then it just kind of and almost just kind of came undone within 2 minutes of the game. And sometimes you're in games, you're dominating, and then another team gets a goal and it just completely shifts the momentum. And that's exactly what happened. You almost kind of can feel the fear creeping in that these are going to get another goal here, and that's kind of what happened. But look, again, going to a shootout, I think they had maybe was it three chances to win the penalty shootout. Definitely two or three chances
Yeah.
to win it. So again, kicking yourself, like the keeper, she must be thinking, look, I've saved three of the first five penalties here. Like you need to give me a dig out, and obviously seeing her stepping up to take the penalty, that's for me. Your players are got confident. Your outfield players are got confident, and she's had kind of got a bit of slack online about why she's taking a penalty. But I think if you look at the two players after her that take penalties, I think neither one of them look both of them missed, and neither one of them looked like they wanted to take it either. So I don't know if it was a case that she was dying to put her hand up, dying to take, but I think it was more that no one else really wanted to do it. So I think, yeah, look, he obviously spoke about the penalties and said, there's no need to practice them, but I'd be on the side of you can definitely practice them. Okay, there's obviously huge pressure when you're going into a game, and you can't really ever replicate that, but you can work on your technique, you can build your confidence in training if you're scoring, five or six of them after training sessions, and get your run up right, get your time of everything right. It definitely can help you if you've done it before. So again, kicking themselves. They had it, one hand almost on the final or on the semi-final and just let it slip away. And look, to be fair to England, it was, it would have been very easy to kind of throw the towel in, but he didn't do that either. And I think, this, like you mentioned, the subs there, it's the strength of England's bench coming on. I think Chloe Kelly comes on, she's pretty much sets up the two goals. And then Ajiman scores the equaliser. So I think the strength they have in their squad at the moment is a big thing that's going to get them help maybe through the semi-final and then maybe help them in the final.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the draw, Spain, of course, also missed penalties, both Caldente and Putellas, but still had enough to see off Switzerland fairly comfortably, 2-0. Obviously, we'll talk about Spain and the other semi-finals a bit later on, but from Switzerland, I suppose they come out of it with a lot of credit. You said last week, I think the main thing for them was try and keep the score down, and with with the help of some missed penalties, they did manage to do that.
Yeah, look, I think, the same as probably Italy, getting this far is a great achievement for them. And you could kind of see it at the end. They were disappointed, but I think when you kind of get over that initial disappointment, it was, thanking the fans and it was celebrating with the fans. So, look, I think coming up against Spain, it's obviously one of the toughest fixtures you could have possibly got. And like you said, keep the score down and then, of course, concede a very early penalty, which is a bit of a killer. And then, look, obviously she misses it, which is big relief, big let off for them. And they've done so well to keep them out for such a long period of the game. But I think, eventually it's always going to come. It's against some of the best attacking players in the world. They got to 66 minutes and 71 minutes before they scored. But you could feel like it was coming. It was, shots like missed Peno off the crossbar post and stuff. So, like, I think, yeah, look, great for them to get as far as they did. I think you have to, when you do reflect on the tournament, you kind of think, this is probably as well as we could have done. So for them, I think, yeah, brilliant. But I just think Spain are just, too strong to be for like the likes of Switzerland to be one up against them.
Yeah, and obviously penalties being a theme in the final quarter-final of last week. So France won, Germany won in terms of after extra time, but then Germany winning 6-5 on penalties. I was talking to Alan Cawley earlier on, who was on co-coms for that game, and he absolutely loved this match. There was just so many different narratives in it, and I think one of the things being obviously France, and something we spoke about pre-tournament, which is huge expectation on them the whole time, and every tournament they seem to fail to live up to it. And then when you look at the XG throughout the game, if you from open play, they had 0.63 for the entire game as well, which is, given the quality they have and the fact that Germany had so many disadvantages both pre-game and then in-game as well. It's quite a disappointing figure.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, going into the game, I thought France were actually going to win it handy enough, just with how Germany have performed and how France have performed, but it obviously didn't go that way. And to get a red card so early on, I think it was 13 minutes, and then France then scored a penalty and got 1-0 up. You kind of thought, this could be a tough day for Germany, but they just had completely different ideas, and France just couldn't really seem to find a way. And Germany just defended brilliantly, and especially to do it with 10 players, and even to do that with 11 players can be tough, but to do it with 10 for near enough to 90 minutes, and then the extra time, it was amazing. And look, France, on the other side as well, they put a great effort in, but they obviously had that goal disallowed, but other than that, was just couldn't really seem to find a way. So I think for them, I don't know, again, is it a mentality thing where it's the later they get in the tournament, do they start kind of you start reading into all the, you've never got past a certain stage, or you start to feel a bit more extra pressure. Can they not handle it? So, look, I thought their substitutions were probably a bit strange as well that they made. He took off Cascarino at 77 minutes. She's been probably their most dangerous player of the tournament. So, for me, that was a bit of a strange one to do. So, I don't know if you could blame all the players if you look at management and their decisions as well. But again, if you're playing against a team with 10 for near enough a full game, and then extra time, and then to lose it on penalties, it's again another team that's probably going to be kicking themselves today.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to get Germany in a penalty shootout. I think historically in the men's or women's game, it's just I don't know what it is. Maybe a genetic thing. They just seem to win penalty shootouts. It seems to be the way it is. But anyway, we're on to the semi-finals, and they're all going to be on RT2, and the RT player Tuesday is the first one. So tomorrow, England against Italy at 8 p.m. kickoff. So it's going to be very much well worth a watch. You mentioned Girelli earlier, and obviously yourself and Maeve you picked her out as sort of the player that would be decisive for Italy. The thing is, she has been scoring goals, but it's the decisive nature of them. The 1-0 winner against Portugal, and then obviously the brace against Norway as well. So it's not just goals, but goals at important times.
Yeah, and that's what you always want from your big players. It's the big moments and big games, and that's what she's done. Popping up with 2 goals, and even for the second one, she seemed to be kind of limping around the pitch. She wasn't even moving properly, and still managed to get a winning goal. So I think she'll definitely be one that England are, picking out as a dangerous player for them. And sometimes, when you're going in, like we've seen how they celebrated, it's they've nothing to lose now. They've gotten as far as they probably ever could have dreamed of going into the tournament. So I think for England, sometimes when you're playing a team like that, it can be so daunting because they've absolutely nothing to lose. If they do lose the game, they're not going to be too disappointed. So for when you're playing a team like that, it's there's no pressure on them. There's all the pressure on your shoulders. It can be very hard. And like I said, there's no pushover at the moment. So look, I think if England go out and play well and play at their best, I think they will beat them. But there is always going to be that element of these just have absolutely nothing to lose here. It's a free hit for these. So, it's always a bit of a nervy kind of one. So I think for England, with how they've started the last game against Sweden, they need to get a good start now against Italy.
Yeah, I think their last meeting was February of last year, and England won 5-1, so they are going to be heavy favourites. But England do seem a bit porous at the back, and particularly like Jess Carter seemed to struggle in against Sweden in the first half. But obviously, they have to note as well, she got a lot of abuse on social media, much of it which was horrible, and that tells us, I suppose, a lot about like social media age. But Jonathan Liu in the Guardian was making a point that actually maybe as much as some of the defenders underperformed, the pressing and some of the use of the ball in midfield may have put them under more undue pressure as well. I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, I think you've probably seen that against Sweden, definitely when they pressed the defenders, it was kind of giving the ball away or making mistakes. And, Jess Carter's not the quickest. She was caught out a couple of times in behind. So she's one that, like, there's been a bit of talk online about whether Serena Regan's going to make changes, and kind of Jess Carter seems to be the one that's being picked out. And look, like even said, the stuff she's receiving online, you just don't know what's going on in the player's mind going into games, and that could possibly be one of the reasons why she's maybe underperforming. But she is the one that's kind of standing out as maybe being a bit of a weak link in that back line, and they haven't looked really, defensively solid at the back or overly confident. So look, Serena's not one who usually kind of makes a lot of changes. So whether she does or not, I don't really know. But I think if there is a change that's an unforced one, I think it could be Jess Carter coming out, and whether it's Greenwoods goes in or Esme Morgan comes in as centre half. But Leah Williamson obviously rolled her ankle as well. It looked pretty. Now she played on for a bit, but it looked pretty bad enough. So whether she's back fit or not, I don't know. But yeah, I think if you're looking at Italy, maybe you can get at their back line if you press them or press their midfield and get them to lose the ball. But looking, England are top quality. They know what they're going to be coming up against. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's any changes made to that back line.
Yeah, and then the other semi-final, of course, Germany against Spain. And I suppose the big challenge here for Germany, like we can talk about the resolve and everything else, but can they do it again, having gone through 120 minutes, penalties, the whole, mental challenge that comes with that, the whole physical challenge they're trying to recover as well. That's going to be a tall order to do it twice.
Yeah, definitely. Look, they're kind of without a couple of players as well. Nuskin is missing out through injury, and Hendrick obviously got the red card, and now Linder is their probably third choice right back at the moment. They've lost Gwyn, and the second choice right back. She might be back in now for this game. I'm not sure what her suspension was, but they've had a lot of chopping and changing winning their 11, so obviously that's not ideal. But look, Spain have obviously proven how good they are. I think Germany defended so well against France, put them under a lot of pressure, closed them down. But, France are probably a more direct, powerful team, whereas, Spain are more a technical kind of short pass team. And if you do press them and get it wrong, they can, bounce the ball around you and pick you out, pick spaces in your back line. So that might be hard to do against Spain. I just think Spain as well, probably the only team so far that haven't lost a game. Germany obviously have had a much tougher run in, extra time. Players are playing 120 minutes. I think you seen Julie Brand coming off at the end, and she was completely running on empty probably for the 5-10 minutes before that. Spain haven't had as tough of a run. They haven't gone to extra time yet. They've probably haven't even been overly challenged where they need to, be hitting fourth or fifth gear. So it's obviously a big ask now for Germany to first of all beat France. Obviously was brilliant, and then recovering time to be the best team in the world is going to be huge. But look, they're probably flying in confidence after picking up that result. So Spain probably not their best performance against Switzerland. So, look, I wouldn't be writing Germany off, but I think if you're backing one team, you'd probably pick Spain.
Yeah, we kind of know what Spain will do. They'll boss possession. They'll play those little triangles, I suppose, with Bonmati, Putellas, Caldente, and others as well, and just try and pick their way through. What the Swiss did well seemed to be to try and close as much of that space down and to sit deep. Is that the only real thing Germany can do? And maybe is it the only thing really, given that they also do need to conserve energy because of everything they went through in the quarterfinal?
Yeah, you're probably right. Like, I think it's probably the best way to go about it. And if you look at Spain, when they have looked vulnerable in games, it's when they have pushed everyone forward and then they do leave that space behind. But if you look at Germany's wingers and Brand and Bull, like they're so quick, and even Hoffman up front who was playing against Switzerland, they put back four under a lot of pressure and they leave space in behind. The two wingers are not the ones that you want running at you. So probably is the best way of going about it, just keeping Spain out, keeping them, sucking them in a bit. Then if you can nick it back, you just hit them on the break because they do leave space behind.
Yeah, and in terms of predictions, like if you were to call it now, in terms of who'll be in the final on Sunday on RTÉ, which way are you going at this stage?
And look, I think the safe bet is probably to say England and Spain. I think they're probably the two favourites. But like I said, if England are not on it, or if they performed how they have performed, if they got through that Sweden game, but for a majority of the game they were really poor, so they're going to need a good performance to beat Italy. So look, I'll go England and Spain as a safe bet, but I have a little slight feeling that maybe Italy could cause an upset.
Okay, we shall see. Anyway, either way, it'll be a great final and will be on RTÉ on Sunday. But now turn our attentions to the Women's Premier Division. Wexford were 3-0 winners away at Sligo Rovers. Pohls continued their good form, 1-0 win over Waterford. Treaty United won 3-1 at Cork City. Yourself and Shels got back to winning ways, 4-1 at Peamount. DLR Waves, we'll talk about as well. 1-0 winners at Shamrock Rovers. That's 2 wins in a row now. And then Athlone at the top have seen their lead cut down to 2 points now after drawing 1-1 with Galway United, with Ashling Meany scoring late equaliser for Galway. And I think you said it last week when you had the setback against Bowes that you were coming out of it thinking still, this title race is far from over. You still have to play Athlone twice, and this equaliser from Ashling Meany has again kind of highlighted that fact that everything can change week to week.
Yeah, look, I've played in the league a long time now. We've seen it coming down to the last game pretty much nearly every year. And I think there was one stage we were leading by 10 or 12 points at one stage, and that then came down to the end of the season game. So, like, I'd never be writing anything off. We're only just over halfway through a season. And, last week was obviously a tough defeat for us, and it was a real setback for us. But we knew things can change pretty quickly. And look, even drawing against Galway. Galway are a really good team, so it's not as if it's been a really bad result. It's these teams are, really good, and it is hard to win every week. So, we knew it was a high possibility that Athlone could drop points, and they obviously did. And looked a great goal from Ashton Meany. Obviously, the keeper kind of tries to clear it and maybe doesn't catch it right. And Ashton, I mean, it's a wonderful finish. So I think, yeah, like, it's cliche, but you just focus on yourself, you focus on your own results, and you need to hopefully things go your way. So look, dropping points was obviously great for us, but like we said, last week it wasn't completely done, and Athlone are obviously feeling the same. They're still 2 points ahead. They're still in first place, so still loads to play for, loads of time to win it, and loads of time to lose it.
Yeah, I think Matty Gibson also had to go off on an injury just shortly after the Kelly Brady goal as well for Athlone, which is so obviously a blow for them. But it's probably one of those rare times they've been so good defensively. They've generally been able to, I think you said it last week, whether it's 1-0 or 2-0 or whatever, they do kind of roll on and get results. It didn't look like they were going to drop points at any stage, but they weren't. I suppose they ruled the thing. They weren't able to add to Kelly Brady's goal, which was a deflected goal in that one.
Yeah, that's 1 is obviously a really dangerous scoreline, and they have been so well defensively in previous games, and it kind of did come from a goalkeeper error. She tries to clear and she just doesn't catch it right, and it could go straight to Ashton Meany's feet, and then take nothing away from the finish. It's a brilliant finish, but it's kind of their own doing, which is always a really disappointing one. So yeah, like they've been great at keeping clean sheets, but to not go and add to your 1-0 lead is obviously leaving yourself in a dangerous position.
Yeah, and then for yourselves away at Peamount, given, as I said, you were kind of concentrating on yourselves, but at the same time, you're coming off the back of a disappointing result, and then Aisling Spillane scores after 3 minutes. Like, what's the thought process going through the squad when that goal goes in?
Look, I think if you're giving up after 3 minutes in a game, you're never going to win anything. So look, we knew we'd loads of time. The only good thing about conceding early is that you've loads of time to get it back. But obviously off the back of a really disappointing result for us, but they were also off the back of a really disappointing result the week before against DLR. So we knew both teams were kind of looking to get back to winning ways. And then obviously, look, they had a much better start. We had a really slow start to the game, even for the whole first half. We weren't at the levels that we could be. And Peamount deservedly probably went 1-0 up and led for most of it, near enough the first half, and then we equalised through a penalty again. So that's their own kind of doing. It was probably a bit of a needless penalty giveaway. So, a bit of a lifeline for us. And then half time, we just come in, you reset, and then we kind of changed around the formation and it seemed to work better for us in the second half. And then I think, we kind of pulled away a bit in the second half. And again, it's our substitutes that are coming on. They're making big impacts when they come on. I think especially Gemma Queen came on and set up that third goal, which was the real kind of killer of the game. Or sorry, it was the fourth goal, which was the real kind of killer off of the game. So yeah, our subs obviously making a huge impact, but great for us to get back to win ways. And I think overall we probably deserve to win the game.
Yeah, and then of course I mentioned DLR Ways you definitely talk about. So that's two good wins in a row now, and this one away at Shamrock Rovers, which is massively impressive off the back of beating Peamount last week. So where do you gauge their improvement in terms of where it's come from? Because they did have to ride their luck against Shamrock Rovers, and it took a sort of a lobbed effort over the goalkeeper from Michelle Doonan off after a very good through ball, has to be said, from Chloe McCarthy to make the difference in this game. But it's been a bit of a sea change in the space of a couple of weeks.
Yeah, look, I don't really know, to be honest, what the answer is. And obviously against Peamount, it was, like you said, a bit of kind of luck, soft enough penalty and then a deflected goal in. But I think this win is probably better away to Rovers. Another great win for them. And if you're watching the game back, it's probably Rovers kicking themselves. They had majority possession, had great chances to score, but just didn't really take them. So don't know if it was a case of DLR were really excellent in the game and Rovers just couldn't break them down. I think it was more so Rovers missing chances or maybe not playing well. And like I've said before, like Rovers are a very young team, and sometimes when you have so many young players, it's hard to be consistent every week because young players are always up and down. So I think for Rovers, it's going to be probably tough to find a consistent form. And then obviously losing Rusha Littlejohn and Katie Keane is a big blow to your team. So I think probably in that game, look, it's a huge win for DLR. I don't want to take anything away from them. And given how the start of the season's gone, to keep yourself motivated to keep putting it up to these big teams is huge. But I think if Rovers are probably being honest with themselves, I think it was probably their own doing that lost them the game.
Yeah, and then for Treaty United as well, and their win against Cork City, Isabella Frakini's goal was lovely as well. Really well taken. She's having a brilliant season. I think she's up to 9 goals now for this season, so she's third in the scorers charts. What is it about her that makes her so dangerous?
No, she's very good, and I obviously marked her when we were away to Treaty in the league game. And when I say she doesn't stop running, I mean she doesn't stop running. And it was about 27 degrees that day, and I was really gonna ask her, it's just, give us 5 minutes breather here. But look, she's fit as a fiddle. She'll run all day, and then she's obviously really good in front of goal, and she's flying at the moment. Like I said, 9 goals. In a team where Treaty, they're not right up the top. They're not winning every week or scoring loads and loads of goals. So to get 9 goals for a team like Treaty is huge. Yeah, she's kind of been one of the breakout players in the league this year. She's someone that we mentioned when we were going into play against, that she's their dangerous player, and she's proved that in other games as well. So she's definitely one to watch, and she's definitely one that's really hard to defend against.
Yeah, and then also one to note as well, Anya Walsh's goal from distance for Cork City was a consolation in that game, but great finish nonetheless. Obviously, the goalkeeper got a bit on the ball as well, but not enough to keep it out. And then the other game, Wexford 3-0 win at Sligo, and it looked like one-way traffic in that game for the most part. But I think there was a few classy finishes, particularly Leah McGrath's goal as well was really well taken.
Yeah, and Sligo probably another team that are having a tough season at the moment. They can't really get too many points on the board, and Wexford, who are maybe a bit up and down, but look, they've had really good results as well, and proved again on Saturday going away to Sligo and winning 3-0. It's all you want. It's a clean sheet, it's 3 goals, and great finishes, especially Liam McGrath. So I think for Sligo, yeah, it's been a tough season so far. Wexford's a bit up and down, but definitely proves they are capable of playing really good football, scoring really good goals. I think it's them and kind of Galway battling out at the moment for that third spot, which is proven to be a good battle. So yeah, look, like I said, there's a lot of tough teams in the league. It's not every week is an easy game, and Wexford are proving no different, even though they're up and down. But you kind of never know. You can never write them off. They're one of them teams that will just never give up, never give in, and they've proven that in the past and proven that again this year.
Yeah, even looking at the table, I suppose before we go, at Lone, obviously top 2 points ahead of yourselves, and then 5 points beyond that. Then you have a clutch of teams, so you've Wexford, Galway, Shamrock Rovers, Treaty, all within 4 points of each other, and then you've got a clutch of sort of Pohls, Peamount, and then DLR not too far away. And even as you go down to the bottom where Sligo Rovers are, nobody is cut adrift from anyone else, which is kind of I suppose, a nice way to be going into this final stretch of the season.
Yeah, and look, I've heard a couple of people online saying, it's either Shels or Athlone to win the league, but we're definitely not thinking that way. Like, I think we're 5 points ahead of Wexford, but like we said last week, showed last week, it can turn very, very quickly, and us and Athlone still have to play each other twice. So that's, either one of us dropping points in both of them games. So I wouldn't be so much as calling it a 2-horse race. We're obviously kind of starting to pull away a little bit, but like I said, there's a lot of football, there's a lot of points still to be played. We obviously lost the Pohls last week, which was, don't know if you call it an upset, but probably if you're looking at the table, it's a team that you would have assumed we would beat, and it just didn't go that way. So, look, our league is always pretty tight. In previous years, it probably has pulled away at this stage. It hasn't seemed to be in that way this year. So, like I said, there's no kind of given games, there's no given 3 points. So, a lot of football to be played, and I'm sure the team is the table's gonna look a lot different the weeks coming.
Yeah, we'll see how it pans out over the next few weeks anyway. But that's it for this week's podcast. We'll be reviewing the final of Euro 2025 with the match, of course, going to be live on RT2 and RT Player this Sunday. And we'll also be chatting LOI and how the clubs are getting on in Europe, among other things. So thanks to Richie and Alan earlier, and cheers to you, Rachel, as well. And enjoy the last few games of these Euros.
Thanks, Raf, you too.